That's why I brought up the previous example, and I'm going to try to say this a lot of times, because I don't want people to think like, oh, because you're accepting means that you understand everything, or it means that you are validating everything in agreement. And I'm like, no, not necessarily. I'm trying to learn, right? That to me is very important.
So, in regards to acceptance, though, what would you say would be a good first step for someone who's having a hard time accepting where they are or how they look like or even their journey? Like, what is something that
Yeah.
you think would be helpful for them?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And I think, to anybody that watches this, I think I'm probably going to say this a lot of times because I just want it to be very understood. Like, acceptance in and of itself is a really, really hard thing to do. And then when you're talking about yourself, when you're talking about others and the way that they see the world or the way that they present to the world,
Mm,
understand that it is very complicated. That's why I brought up the previous example, and I'm going to try to say this a lot of times, because I don't want people to think like, oh, because you're accepting means that you understand everything, or it means that you are validating everything in agreement. And I'm like, no, not necessarily. I'm trying to learn, right? That to me is very important. So let me, on the terms of acceptance, let's talk about challenges, right? Before we go directly into that.
I
So
like
what's challenging things that we may go through in trying to accept ourselves? Let's bring up some examples that me and Carlos have discussed. Because I think we're going to end up doing a lot of storytelling. I can foresee today.
I love it. I love it.
You brought up hair, right?
Mm,
I'll start with hair. I'll use myself, right?
go, yeah.
I grew up very traditional. My hair was always very short. My father was in the military, so he was very particular on having very low cut hair. So I had mine probably at, like, for those that go to barbershop, at like a 1, maybe a 2 sometimes, but it's very, very low, right? So I had that for a majority of my life. So then when I did decide to try to grow my hair out, I didn't necessarily feel as confident as you could imagine because I hadn't had a lot of experience doing it. So it was a bit uncomfortable. So accepting things that you cannot control, accepting who you are. Skin complexion. This is obviously something that as a society and as a global society, we still have difficulty with today, right? It's still, and that's on a global scale. Then we can talk about culture within the Black and the Latino community. We got to talk about colorism,
Mm,
which is within that, with the idea that light skin is better than darker skin. So then
yep.
there's challenges within that, right? So we have to understand how to navigate that. And then obviously being a man versus a woman, there's obviously differences in terms of those different gender roles. So we can go in so many different directions, right? So it's very complicated. The whole point I'm trying to make here is it's very nuanced, right? And trying to discover who you are.